The fintech space is really exciting. Last year, the investments basically grew by about 40%. That is, even if we take and financials investment out of the equation. A lot of interesting use cases have matured. In fact, we also have a unicorn or two out of our neighboring country. So our region also has a lot of contribution in the global fintech landscape now. With this picture in mind, Pakistan is at a relatively nascent stage. Though the regulator is very active, they recently introduced a sandbox environment as well. They're engaged, they're pursuing its adoption at this point in time. The opportunity is immense. We still have very low penetration of different banking tools and insurance as well. So, but at the same time, due to the highly regulated environment, which is only getting more challenging due to the security issue over the past 2 decades now, the complexity of operating in the finance space is very high. And to work on technology in the financial space is even higher. Understanding this challenge and how it discourages a lot of new talent to innovate and operate in this space and look for opportunities elsewhere. As we're looking at, we have about more than 50 different incubation programs in the country right now that are housing a lot of startups in different spaces, and very few in the fintech space. About 2 years ago, we started a journey. After identifying the opportunity, the ambition was to create a leading platform that helps create the right ecosystem, foster it, and allow leading talent to, in their ambition to increase financial inclusion in the country, improve the lifestyles in the country, in Pakistan, by addressing real problems, not just, and obviously most success stories are around real problems, especially in the fintech space right now. So we started off with an acceleration program with a few leading brands around the ecosystem. Graduated was 7 startups last year. Karandas, Pakistan was also a major sponsor during the program. This year, looking at the lack of awareness, particularly as a major bottleneck, and to reduce the discomfort, we decided to start a Fireside Chat series hosted by Owais Zaidi. This is a monthly activity that we're going to conduct, in which we'll be asking industry specialists and senior professionals to come in, help us better understand various areas in which fintechs and different startups can actually contribute and add value while growing themselves. To take you further, I'm going to ask Owais Zaidi to come and introduce our guests for today and take you through the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasir. I request Shahid to please join us. He's the group head digital for UBL, and it's always great to have him since they've spent the most amount of time and money in building an experience center for digital. So please see, we have Shahzad Shahid, who's technically running one of the oldest fintechs in Pakistan. So he's the CEO, and Halima, who has just moved back to Pakistan and started a fintech. So. Basically, with very brief introduction, so I'll grab my notes so I can get what I have to talk about. So I think, Nasir said it all, there's a lot of happening in the world, right? Fintech is still one of the fastest growing space. But Pakistan, we haven't seen the kind of traction that we have seen in other markets, right? We look at India right next door, even some of the less developed markets in Africa have a lot more. So one of the things is how is everybody looking at the fintech space, especially Shahid, from your side, you're coming from a large bank, and whatever I've interacted with you and your team, you sensed a keen sense of and desire to work with fintechs, being open to them. So is it working out? What's your take on the local ecosystem, and what do you think is missing?
Thank you, Rich. Thank you very much. To begin with, let's talk about why fintechs in the first place. What is a fintech from a large bank's perspective. So not the fintech definition I'm going to get into, but how a large bank sees this new phenomenon called fintech and why the need for fintech today. So we've seen disruption in the global industry over the last 10 years, or primarily because of three reasons. Changing customer behavior, obviously, the changing technological trends, and then increased competition. And competition not from within the same industry, but across industries. So banks, large banks especially, they've had a great time over the last, I would say 300 years. But because of this disruption in the last 10 to 12 years, these banks have been forced to come out of their comfort zones, especially in the developed economies, more than the emerging markets. And in the developed economies, because of these three disruption factors, banks are finding it difficult to respond to those changes at the desired pace. And that's why the fintechs are occupying that space, and they are making use of this opportunity in those markets where they have agility, they have access to talent, which the large banks obviously cannot because of their internal dynamics, because of the legacy they're carrying, or other concerns, and they're very slow to respond. However, in emerging market, the reason, and especially in Pakistan, as you mentioned, banking is not in that kind of turmoil. The way banks are facing the music in Western countries and in developed economies where the spreads have vanished, regulatory compliance related sanctions and penalties, you read about them all the time. And high operating costs for that matter. It's a matter of survival for those banks. In Pakistan, the situation is not that bad yet. And that's why the boardrooms, the stakeholders are still under that impression that it's going to take another 10 to 15 years before this market starts to respond in that fashion. Hence, the focus on fintechs has been, I would say, relatively speaking, no large bank is taking these fintechs seriously yet. As opposed to those markets. So that's how the large banks are already. I think that the reality will soon hit them because they are still not in a position to respond to these changes at that pace. And certainly because of the way they are structured, the talent that fintechs can get access to, that talent is not available. Even if they want to, it's not available to those large banks because of the work environment, because of the policy, because of the remuneration structure. So I would say it will take another 2 to 3 years before banks start taking fintech seriously.
I think that's a very valid point. So the boardroom conversations are definitely not about fintechs, right? So this is, especially in Pakistan, a CEO comes for 3 years, right? That's the norm, that's the statement, it's a contract. So at least anybody who's joined now is still saying it's not going to happen on that. So that's what you're essentially saying. But you said two types of things. So one thing is I hear a lot is that it's not going to happen for the next 10 to 15 years. And this is from senior mentors. I mean, when I say senior, very senior, but with a lot more gray hair than all of us in this room, they have this opinion that it's not going to happen for the next 10 to 15 years. But you also mentioned that in 3 years you see the trend shifting. This is more in line with what I personally believe in, right? Because the customer journey, the experience is all changing very fast. The expectations of customers, because of access to technology is changing. And so just to come back to this, so your personal belief, despite the boardroom belief, is a more like a 3-4 year window that you will start seeing a major shift in the thing?
So see, in our case, so in case of, for example, in our case, we are already convinced and we feel that we are already late, and that's why we're already working with more than half a dozen fintech partners because we can see that it's coming, whether we like it or we don't. In the boardroom, obviously there is skepticism in all the boardrooms, I would say. where the question arises, why change? So it's as simple as that. Why is there a need to change? Banking industry is one industry which is doing very well in Pakistan. If you look at the profits of the top 5 banks, uh, there's no other industry in Pakistan right now which is on a consistent basis delivering that kind of bottom line and contributing to the government's kitty. So the question arises: why should we change when we are doing so well? So, and then obviously, if you want to invest in certain area, if you want to embark on a new initiative, then the question arises on the return on investment, the payback. Okay, if you want to invest in this kind of skill set, in these kind of initiatives, or in this kind of special purpose vehicle, we were talking about another subsidiary or a licensing framework, then the challenge that is thrown at you that the banks across the world, they have different challenges because of those markets. Those challenges do not exist in Pakistan. So we cannot simply expect that the market here is going to, behave in exactly the same way as you would find in a highly educated, more developed, more technologically savvy economy. So, but as far as we are concerned, we have recognized that this is coming. Over the next few years, the industry is going to go through a major transformation. Cost of doing business is not sustainable. If you look at the recent financials published for all the financial institutions in the country, one thing which is very alarming is that the cost to income ratio of all these banks is crossing the 55% mark for all the banks, and that is quite alarming, and it's not sustainable. So I think the time has already come where this they will start to realize that there's no other way, but they have to collaborate with if they are because they can't change that quickly. So they need help from startups, from fintechs, to help them get out of this and and transform.
Moving on to you, Shahzad, you've been, so in a way you're a fintech, but you're a very traditional player. You've been servicing banks for, as long as I can remember. But, 20, more than 20 years, I think. Exactly my career, right? So, how do you see this change coming? Especially, so you have it's more like a traditional technology supplier, but in this new evolving space, how do you see your role evolving? You're a platform player, you're not just a technology player, right? So how do you see yourself fitting in? How can you make life easier for banks? And how can you, in a way, play the bridging role between startups and more with, and banks as a more mature industry player?
So basically, coming to our industries is digital. So basically, if you go back into late 90s and 2000, the technology was remote banking, alternate delivery channels, now shifted to payments. So can you mention or classically, the banks are still doing that remote banking or ADCs under the umbrella of digital banking, most of the banks. With the only difference that the mobile app has been added to those channels. So call centers are old, IVR are old, ATMs are old, so everything is old, right? So the only new thing that has happened to the banks, they've added mobile app to it. So this is so basically from our perspective, as TPS, we have been providing or enabling those financial institutions to offer, in that context, the digital financial services ever since mid 90s. Now, what has changed is actually has not changed. Rather, what should have been changed has not been changed yet. So when you say digital banking, and like Shahid, like said, the need of higher efficiency and agility, it requires automation. So I go and speak to banks here in Pakistan or in Africa or in the Middle East. There's a little roadmap on the process automation. They have been, in silos certain experimentation done, and we are talking about RPAs a lot these days. But this has to be given the same visibility, within the bank and its understanding and acknowledgement like we give to the mobile app. Because you can't have the distorted, fractured experience across channels where you see that the bank account opening will take days, the card will take days, the check will take days in a very digital environment. So from the onboarding to the entire life cycle, it has to be completely digital. And this is where TPS has kept itself abreast. I mean, the reason of TPS staying alive after 2 years of onslaught is we have been able to continuously update ourselves. So we now have an offering on the RPA side as well. We've done a couple of projects in the Middle East. We have eliminated completely the need for certain knowledge tasks. So let's be more about certain other aspects of technology which are so relevant to the digital offering at that other side. Now, in terms of digital native itself, my view is that the banks are going to stay there, at least in the context of Pakistan, and talk about retail bank. And the biggest reason is the policymakers as of yet, are very clearly protecting banks, very clearly. You talk about Africa, you talk about India, you talk about any country where you see massive disruption. It happens when you let go the non-banking players, cross the line, make a product successful, and then go. Uber, Airbnb, lending club, you take startups in fintech or non-financial space. They all have questioned the current regime or the laws and things, and then once they have the critical mass, and then they are in a position to talk about taxes and other framework, right? We talk European Union, we talk about UK, we talk about other countries. So India has seen the unicorns building up because of two reasons. One, India's brand image as a hub of technology. One. Second, 1.2 billion population, with a lot of youth there. And third, the demonetization. Pakistan has seen home shopping and so many other marketplaces that came up years ago. Why they could not catch the fancy of investors? So have we seen the amount of money the investors give to those sort of startups to take exit? You can only laugh at it compared to the amount of money that they exit at in some other part of the world, be it Singapore, be it Dubai, or be it India, for example, in this part of the world. So unfortunately, money in this domain is directly proportional to the number of fintechs that you will see coming up, sustaining and surviving. And this is where so TPS as a company has been making efforts in different areas. This is where I have been sort of very vocal about it. That we need to have better collaboration with the banks in terms of the banks coming up and the central bank has their soul. And most of the banks open up. I mean, we've seen central bank, most of the banks we do now, forcing the banks to allow their cards getting linked to anybody else's wallet. Now, once this becomes formalized, it's going to really open a lot of stuff in Pakistan, and you see things shaping up and giving real value to the customer, which we are struggling to have at this stage.
Actually, I will ask something. I'll go back to you, Sharjeel, on this because you mentioned something about the regulator, right, and the developed markets. So we've seen a global trend as well happening is that a lot of fintechs, so your banks are protected, right? So when the Russian banking came at that point, State Bank pointed at exactly the same thing in the BP, the regulations. And they said only a bank-led model is allowed. What it led to was every telco going out and buying a controlling stake in a bank. So essentially the message and the feeling is that as a fintech, will have to go and buy a banking license because the giant will stay where they are. I mean, I don't see even in 10 years HBLs, UBLs, just based on the momentum they have in terms of the depositor base and the commercial banking aspects and now corporate banking to be this first. But the smaller banks being threatened by like Felipe may not happen because of the Uber acquisition, but they were in the business, right? But a successful company with a good use case coming and taking a banking license and trending your retail business. So is that something that's going to happen in Pakistan? What's your thought on that?
See, I would like to add to what Shahzad just mentioned, that banking is one of the oldest industries in the world. It started with 10,000 BC. That's when well, in fact, it started from Adam and Eve. But the formal banking, the way of banking, goes back to 10,000 BC. And in all these 12,000 years, one thing has remained consistent and common, is what Shahzad mentioned, that regulators have protected the banks. Unless you have a license, you are not allowed to enter into any banking activity in any economy. For the first time in the history, that is changing. The EMI regulation we were talking about earlier, which arrived on the scene a couple of weeks back, the first page, apart from what these EMIs institutions can do, what they are allowed to do, on the first page of that regulation, State Bank for the first time writes that we are going to lower the barriers to entry. So those barriers to entry into this financial or banking landscape, and it's happening all over the world, that now regulators have realized that if they want to encourage financial inclusion, if they want to encourage use of technology for the convenience of the end user, rather than to the benefit of the banks and the people sitting in the boardrooms and the shareholders, if they have to take care of the end user, then they have to allow non-banking players, technology, telco companies to compete and to start offering those products. Open banking is another example. It's detrimental for banks, for large banks, that they're being forced to share their data that they've accumulated over centuries. Now they're being forced to share that data with other companies. Our finance minister, Asad Umar, was in Karachi a couple of weeks back, and he spoke about it, that the role that fintechs can play even in Pakistan economy over the next 10 years. Banks have failed to do that. He was quite vocal about it, that the expectations were not fulfilled by the banks. Hence, now the regulator is moving in that direction where they're trying to lower the barriers to entry.
So in terms of enablement of fintech in Pakistan and global PPS, for example, in that context, if you look at my view is one of the technical hurdle to fintechs is non-availability of infrastructure. So we don't have a central payment gateway, for example, or whatever you call it, national payment gateway, or whatever. So we may have a sandbox coming up, but what's next? Nothing. All right. And then are the banks open at this stage? I'm sure they will be in the next few months, like this and next point. But at this stage, this process is not there. So we believe that we need to have a national level infrastructure which has the digital data rich connectivity with the banks or the entities which are in the ecosystem of payments. So the problem today is we don't have enough data. We have only bare minimum information that is necessary for a transaction. So we are working with NIFT to set up the platform for a context-based financial transactions. So just to give you an example, you pay electrical cable, right? But do we in that transaction or in that exchange of messages also say the number of units consumed? The address of that sort of bill payer and other information. If I have that, I can possibly tell the customer how to save on the energy cost. Good for the country, good for the this is a fintech. The problem is we don't have enough information. So we as a sort of company TPS are enabling certain infrastructure to have to adopt the new age messages like ISO 2 enable data developing central bank as well, and have those fintechs that come in and then create different items.
So Halima, moving on to you, you have recently moved back, you're doing a fintech startup. So share a little bit about your experience so far. You've seen it in different markets. What are some of the challenges and opportunities? I'm sure you move back, so there must be some opportunities that you're looking at, right?
So fintech means a whole lot of different things to a lot of different people. But really what it is, applying technology to financial services, and it's something that's not new. However, what's new is the pace at which technology is changing financial services. And that becomes an opportunity for people like us who've done and seen banking space to come back and explore this market because, like you said, there's not a lot of focus on fintechs right now because you don't see them as your threat. That gives us a platform to look at consumer behaviors and enable different demographics and customers by collecting data and by also understanding what is it that the customer really wants. Why has financial inclusion been such a big problem in Pakistan? It gives us, from a very different lens, we're able to see these challenges and create opportunities for ourselves. And like you said, that India and different places and different neighboring countries have seen regulators change their behavior and understanding of fintechs. But every country went through a similar pattern where fintechs were not considered threats. They were not your de facto bank, so they had a lot more opportunities to play around with different kinds of technologies, different kinds of business models. And then when they started going for the same kind of target audience that banks were going for, the regulators would woke up and said, okay, it's time to make a change, and it's time for banks and fintechs to collaborate. And I think from in this space that we exist, where we all go for financial services should be accessible to anybody and everybody, partnerships and collaborating with different banks and different institutions to come together and say, okay, what is it that we should be building? It doesn't necessarily have to be copy-paste to different regions and bring it because our audience is different. Our customers are different, our demographics are different. Their understanding and relationship with money is very, very complex. So before we build new products and before we bring in newer technology, it is about educating and reducing that friction people have with banks or with the money that they have.
So, can you share some of the challenges? This is great definition, but as a fintech startup in Pakistan, have you tried to reach out to any bank for collaboration? What's been the results? What are some of the frustrations, challenges, opportunities you see?
So one of the biggest challenge when, so I moved back November 2017 and I've been an investment banker in North America. The biggest challenge was the data wasn't new, like you said. Like we don't know who your customer really is. हम हर जगह चीजें बना लेते हैं, different products बना लेते हैं, but जब उनका इस्तेमाल ही नहीं हो रहा तो फायदा। So one of the biggest challenge was getting that data and getting that data for a large population which is still in a very informal sector. So last year for Oraan was mostly just going around Pakistan and understanding the demographics and understanding what is that relationship with money and that has stopped them from being into the formal sector. So what we do collaborate, we have on the investment side, we work with MCB RFB, we have EFU Insurance with us, we have, what we're doing is we're aggregating, we're creating a platform that humanizes personal finance because we believe that's the first step into the formal economy. So we humanize that and we simplify the extremely complex financial concepts for an average person, along with aggregating a very fragmented market to give options to different people. So we work with MCPR. We were collaborating with UBL fund managers. We had EFU Insurance on board. So there is that people are open to it. People are, but they also see us as okay, ठीक है, आप आ जाए lead generation हो जाएगी. But it's from a brainstorming perspective. That doesn't, like, other than lead generation, there's not brainstorming happening. which I think needs to come together. People with banks and institutions need to come together and collaborate and address the problem that exists in Pakistan and not be naive about it.
So essentially, they're happy to get a sales deal, but they're not really happy. They're not interested in a deeper conversation.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. So, especially for those, I'd like to know that you work, I'm sure, a lot more, startups reach out to you. What is it that you feel is missing? Because is that a lack of understanding from where you're coming, your constraints, your regulatory constraints, or they don't have enough domain expertise or technical expertise, or the expectations are too high? How would you phrase your challenges of working with startups as a last man?
See, we always encourage, and we get to see so many startups and established fintechs coming up to us, and our approach is very simple, that we want to encourage innovative ideas, and if they can deliver on those ideas, if they have the capacity and capability, because there's one thing, in most of the cases, we find that the ambition is there, the passion, the dream is there, but it's not always supported by the capacity and the capability. So, a lot of startups, obviously, they start with a great idea, but the idea has to be translated, especially for a formal organization structure, a running business, catering for millions of customers. The appetite to take chances and risks are pretty low. So what we look for in startups is that, are what they're saying, can they put the money where the mouth is? Can they fulfill those even their ambitions in a timely manner, in a cost-effective manner, in a controlled, disciplined manner? Do they have the infrastructure? Do they have that structure or target operating model to deliver on whatever what they're saying? So this is one thing that we look for. And as I said, we are already working for half a dozen partners, and we are always on the hunt for more startups with bright ideas, but especially with the ability to deliver on those ideas. Because as I started my discussion, why fintech in the first place? Banks have the customers, banks have the data, banks have technology departments larger than you would find IT departments in any other industry. So, for example, in our case, we've got over 500 people working in IT. So why fintech? So fintech has to come up with that value proposition for a bank like us, where yes, agility is there, availability of the skill set, but more importantly, if they can deliver in that disciplined way, ensuring the governance, the protocol, the security, everything as per banks or regulators' expectations, then I would say banks will be forced to start trimming their IT infrastructure and engage more and more startups and fintechs. So that is yet to be seen. That is one challenge that we see with these startups.
So, we talked about the Western markets, and we talked about how they are advanced with us. But if you look at Pakistan is very middle of the road. So, the whatever bank is very mature in terms of the regulations and everything. At par pretty much with the West. We were ahead. The idea of came in the US did not have a real time fund transfer, right? In Pakistan, we kind of stopped there. That's perfect. But a lot of progress happened in Africa where there was nothing. The customer literacy was very low, the education level was very low, and the banking system was virtually non-existent, right? So, and there was no regulatory framework. So these new players like M-Pesa, they came and they integrated. So sometimes it's good to be on the extreme end, right? In the middle of the road, you're still stuck in the middle of the road. But having said that, Pakistan has a fairly strong regulator. They can be progressive sometimes, at least in the conversation they are progressive. So I think we were there at that last chat. where they're trying to, and a lot of desperation comes out of the fact that they're massively failing on the national financial inclusion targets, right? So with a 50% target, they're barely at 20%, and the deadline is next year. So that's why the whole electronic money issues are coming, and they're trying to somehow lower the bar for other people to come in. So do you think that the electronic money will be a game changer? And do you think that one is on the regulatory side, the other side, the compliance, right? Because a bank like HBL, I don't know if I'm supposed to quote, but they took a massive hit, public knowledge, on failure to comply. So a bank with, I think, the compliance department is probably bigger than all the fintechs combined in Pakistan. So if they were unable to fulfill, how do you foresee these young, small, underfunded startups to be compliant? I think that's the other flip side of the equation. Yeah.
So before I get to this question, interesting terminology has recently come up, and it's tech fit.
Yeah.
So the fear of the banks is not from the fintech, because fintech over times across the globe have been found to be collaborating with the banks. When you pick any fintech, they collaborate with the banks, which we see in Pakistan as well. The problem that the banks fear is like they say, hand in the room. So it's basically tackling with the technology companies, big establishments, get into the financial services. So the name of the game is who has customers. It's not about financial services, it's not about anything else. Who has customers? So if Gay Electric tomorrow wants to become a financial services player, it has customers, it has data, it can offer so much to the customers that they may decide to have some amount of money with them and take certain advantage. Same is true for Green, Uber, you name a big retailer, for example. So that's basically more on the bank side and the fintech side. Fintech, in my view, will more in the collaboration space. And the tech thing will make the banks collaborate. So this is basically the thing will change. Now, coming to the fintechs, underfunded fintechs, I think this is where people like Fintech Factory have sort of step up. Globally, Toronto, for example, has become huge in terms of incubators and whatever. Like I said, they created more jobs last year than Delhi has produced in the US. We're talking about startups. So a lot of incubators have to come up, a lot of accelerators have to come up. So enabling a society, where there are very few number of graduates coming up, and the quality of education, unfortunately, we all know about it. We all interview people, so we need to really work harder as an industry. Banks, non-banks, service providers come up, enabling these accelerators, incubators, and help those young minds who have got bright ideas, help them, groom them, create something which is more real, which is practical, which can be adopted, and which can really sustain, the challenges and the audits they have to go through. In terms of the ability to protect the bank from a situation, I think it's a concern that has everybody else has. And there's no easy answer to it, to be very frank. But I think the banks are really going to play, the fatherly role here. Pick up the great ideas, possibly invest into them some portion, and create, and like I say, co-create models. I don't expect fintech to come up. I'm not worried about tech. Fintech should come up, have something which is ready to plug in into the banks and we can go ahead with it. I think it's more about co-create, like they have done. They have done design thinking workshops, improve the product, do the pilot, bring maturity to it, and then plug it into it. And this is, I think, where the bank really have to step in, like UBL, others have to basically come forward with it, work with these accelerators, incubators, and I think create the whole ecosystem.
So, Halima, would you like to add something in terms of, you mentioned the point about how some institutions are not willing. So, what do you think the fintechs should be doing, right? Because you represent all of them. to make this banks and large institutions sit up and notice that?
I think it is similarly to what Shahzad said about tech firms and why they are sprouting everywhere and going for that big win is because of the brand loyalty and the trust that technology companies have with their customer services. I think what startups in that space has to go and create that base of customers that are brand loyal to them, and then go to the banks and be able to collaborate and say that we've done X amount of work, we've done the homework for you, this is what the audience wants. Let's collaborate and go for the larger population. So I think that, from a collaboration point, it is our duty right now to create models that are more sustainable, not just bright ideas and like very ambitious target, but really dig down deep on what the problem is that we're solving for and pick one line for it. Understand it, deliver on it, test it out, then go back to the banks and collaborate on a larger and create that loyal base of customers. Because what's happening with the audience and as we move demographics is people are losing trust. People, that relationship is finishing, that relationship is also not loyal. कल मुझे कोई और आपके प्रोडक्ट देगा जिसमें वॉलेट्स में होता है कि यहाँ पर अच्छी कैंपेन आएगी मैं इस पे चला जाऊँगा मैं दूसरी वॉलेट पे ये कैंपेन आएगी मैं इस पे चला जाऊँगा. So we need to stop that shift happening from one place to another. And it is about creating that base where people trust and then going and delivering the products that they want, not what the banks or fintechs think they should be making. Because then it's a waste of your time, it's a waste of resources, and you don't move anywhere.
So Jeremy, since you're more impartial than you've been around here for a longer time. So when you plan and look at the market, is there a fintech out there, honestly, that you would classify as a success story?
I think TPS.
TPS is a traditional technology player, right? But a fintech, an instructor, right? So they're more like a traditional supplier in the industry. They're trying to break out the mold, but they have a traditional. Have you seen a success story that you would say relatively successful?
I think it is about changing behaviors and what Easy Paisa was able to do. Go for a very underbanked market and introduce that concept of movement of money the way they did. I think that's a success story. So it's not just about making money and getting customers, it's about also changing behaviors. So in my opinion, that fintech startup is a success story.
What about you? Can you give another example beyond that?
Well, I think, I don't think of it as Easy Paisa, but he's so right. I think Easy Paisa is a huge disruptor in our society. Honestly, can't think of more. I'm not sure about Fozer's with credit fix because
it's still early days. With credit fix, it's still early days. I'm very optimistic about it, but to call it a success story will take another 2 to 3 years.
I think in that case we don't have much examples in the country that I say that they are successful as something. So Easy Paisa possibly similar to Easy Paisa when they get called jazz whatever. But I think.
But there's like a.
I'm thinking of any of the if you really want to sort of stress the definition of fintech, one thing is an example. So what One has done is a non-banking entity, created by the bank, and this was really deeply into that sort of creation, doing something which has really revolutionized the entire entry to the past. I think it was 2002. Yeah, it's like for the past 16, 17 years. So I think in that respect, I can say that One was a fintech back then. I don't know what you would call where to sort of categorize One today or Visa, Mastercard today. Yeah. But I think they're all sort of fintechs as such.
Okay, so you want to add, is there anything that you see as a success story or an upcoming success story?
See, success is a very relative term. How do you define success? So, So we're working with, as I said, more than half a dozen fintechs. I don't want to name them, it's a trade secret, but they are really good at what they're doing. They're really, really good. They're not very well known, they're not popular, but it's the right combination of teams, passion, skill set, ability to deliver. But let's define success for Pakistani market for a second, because how do you gauge success? Something don't change. It's straight out of business management 101. That if you're not a charitable organization and if you're a commercial enterprise, the overriding objective is to maximize return for the shareholder. That's the overriding objective. Digital or non digital, technology or no technology, customer base or no customer base. These are all means to an end, and that end is, are you maximizing the return in those circumstances for the shareholder or not? Now, all over the world, this return comes in two forms. One, obviously, by increasing the valuation of the company, and then hoping that you'll be able to spin it off or sell it. The other way is obviously through profits and dividends as a result. These are the only two ways that you can gauge how successful a commercial enterprise is. A Pakistan challenge here. Uber gets taken over at $3.1 billion recently. They've never made money. Uber is going for IPO at about $125 billion. Uber. Yeah. And what they're saying that Uber will never make money. They're openly and publicly confirming this, the business model will never make money. And it's still worth $125 billion. Now, in Pakistan, the stock market, the economy, the shareholders are not at that maturity level where they are willing to invest and invest and invest, hoping for a 15-year down the line valuation of a company which they will be able to spin off or and realize that investment. They want returns in the shape of dividends, if not immediately in the short to medium term. They want to see the payback period, and that's how all the shareholders and investors are functioning in this part of the world at least. ATM has never made money. M-Pesa has never made money. Yes, they are worth $10 billion. ATM is worth $10 billion today. So in Pakistan and in all these cases, there are only two, three investors, by the way, in all of these global examples. So if you take Alibaba, Tencent out of these, then you won't have examples to quote because these are the few major players behind all these acquisitions all over the world. So the dilemma that we are facing in Pakistan is, and this is where fintechs they can play a very important role. If they start focusing on those value propositions for these large banks, where they can prove to these banks that this idea is $1 million idea, literally $1 million idea. It's not just a cool idea. This idea is financially feasible, will either ensure enhancement in revenue for the franchise, or improving the operational efficiency, or reducing the cost. So if that idea can serve any of this purpose, then that fintech will be, wholeheartedly be accepted into the fold of the formal financial sector.
Very well. So here, if somebody has a question to the hands of participants, feel free to raise their hand. Somebody will give your mic and you can be part of the conversation.
So Daraz is not a fintech.
Yeah, no, Daraz is
an online marketplace.
It's online marketplace.
So maybe the fintech they cover it.
But this is a startup, but if you look at it, technically it was sort of a failure. They got numbers and all, but they got acquired. So as part of the whole transaction, they got acquired, but they are a threat. So that's when the tech spin comes in, right? That's what Sadar was talking about. That today, so if there are a lot of people transacting on that platform, and so let's say they go into groceries and all, and there's no reason to be on that platform, and they say, hey, start keeping your money with us, and you get discounts. And if they invest 60% of your shopping basket every month, you have a much stronger incentive parking your money with them than with UBL or HBL or any other bank. So yeah, they can come in with their traction and customer base and disrupt the banking sector. And it's just what, $10 million to get a license. The company worth $120 million is not a big deal to come and put $10 million capitalization for license. Is that correct?
But that also puts banks in an interesting position, because if you want fintechs to be reducing the costs for you or going for ideas that are $1 million, then there is this big threat of tech firms coming up and saying, oh, we have the customer base to come in and completely disrupt you. Doesn't that, have you guys started thinking about those conversations? Or is that not on the table right now because the focus is so much on fintechs?
You guys were, sorry, go ahead. You guys were asking a question that State Bank's quite progressive. I looked at the PSO/PSP regulation 4 years ago. The EMI regulation has exactly the copy-paste of the same capital requirements. So how is that progressive, and how do you guys see that moving forward with the capital requirements?
All right, so I happen to be, I have met multiple times the US embassy, the US consulate in Karachi, and they was commercial Karachi and everybody. So it was the guys, last year it was very progressive conversation where, a lot of things should be done and whatever. But then this FATF thing came up. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that Pakistan is unfortunately the center of crisis, geopolitical and other problems that we have, and those problems are genuine, and they in fact mind large everything that we do as a business. So with FATF there, we have to be I think 400% more conservative. Instead of at the time we have to really digitize and let go and open banking and whatnot. But I think we're now taking stock of how things that exist today are really protected. So while PSO could not be so successful or successful, that is acknowledged, EMI I don't think is a copy paste, and we're talking about it
from a capital requirement point.
Right. So think about it. If you can take a deposit of 4 billion rupees, don't you have a responsibility to have money to pay back if your model fails, or you basically, the money evaporates in the way you invest the money. Central Bank in Pakistan, and it's very important to understand, Central Bank in Pakistan is a guarantor for every account holder. Which basically means if I as Shahzad put in 10,000 rupees in a fintech or an EMI, and tomorrow this fintech closes down, State Bank will pay me their 10,000 rupees. So how can State Bank give that guarantee when they have no assurance? And if you got 400 million, it's against 4 billion rupees of balance that you can maintain. I think one issue is, which we have talked a lot with Central Bank, is allow the pilot projects to come up. Don't talk about 4 billion, let's talk about 40 million, 10 million, and make it so easy that the real innovators can create ideas, do the pilot on a very small segment of customers, and then they can raise funding. I agree with you today, and I am with you on it, that even companies like TPS, we have to ride on NIF and others to really do something big. Because we don't have that statutory and financial muscle to put everything into this one business and make it successful. This is a situation, but I think we really have to understand what Central Bank is basically coming from. And I really wonder, I don't ask them after this EMI issuance, that why have they not issued a license which is basically really capped to 10 million or something to let the innovation happen, and then these banks can come and pull in the money and take you out.
Yeah, just to follow up, because if it were progressive, you can have lower limits for paid-up capital, and you can allow a certain number of transactions, right? So that would allow the smaller players who have ideas to test it out. The exposure can be managed. That's what I'm trying to say. So wouldn't that be something they can look at?
I think, you know, none of us is basically representative of central bank, so we can't really talk much about it. But I think like you said, FATF and other things are, you know, so much engaging for the central bank. I think they're very cautious about how much ambition they can get. If somebody has a great idea, you know, you can still collaborate, you know, with the banks and find a way to sail through. Till the time there are better times, and you know,
Just to add to this, progressive in today's day and age also means not getting your fingers burned. Because the way the regulators all over the world, they are under fire from the taxpayer. Taxpayers have been asking them, you know, because of this started with the financial meltdown of 2008, and it still continues, whether it's insurance, PPI, you know, penalties in all shapes and forms. Taxpayers, they are demanding answers from the regulators because they were responsible. So in that context, I think State Bank of Pakistan is, I would rate them very highly as compared to other regulators all across the world. Because the way they have managed the regulatory framework in the country, we are not seeing those kind of issues that the other world countries are going through.
Yeah, I think I was second on that. So I made the concept of a note point that they're progressive in conversation. They're very progressive. They're open to listening, but you need to understand the constraints. So A, they are the guarantors. B, they have to look at the ground realities in terms of your FATF, your money laundering, other issues. And thirdly, what you were talking about, there is a lot of talk going around sandboxing. So one of the things that we've all raised with them, and we were just at State Bank, I think it was 2-3 weeks ago, and Shahzad was sitting right next to me there. We said, like, startups are about trying and failing, right? So this is a point they understand. We said that give us a regulatory sandbox, we'll come, we'll do a small test, we can fail and we can go home, right? Or we can learn and we can raise money and fulfill requirements. So that's a point we're constantly hammering on with them. And even that has a lot of things. You know, there's no one established model of doing regulatory sandboxes. But this is an agenda, and you know, it's why we're bringing it up. We are pushing it very hard, and we'll keep on pushing it hard. And they're listening, and they're trying to figure out how to best address that. So that would be it. So yeah, please go on. Just introduce yourself as well when you're doing that.
My name is Sharjeel Shahid, and I'm currently working as a project manager. My name is Sharjeel Shahid, I'm working as a project manager. Right now, this fintech industry starts with easy paisa. This is the only one.
Please, sorry.
It starts with easy paisa. The wow factor is movement. With cash, we are selling easy wow factor. Then bank side, digital banking related. So what trends do we see? As I see is the chatbots. So we are looking at the chatbots now as a payment instrument. हम easily payment कर सकते हैं, but set of instructions के साथ हम उसको linking करवा सकते हैं हमारे messages के साथ. जैसे Paytm का एक startup है. You can instruct your messages to pay Mr. A and Mr. B. So what else trends do we see in this fintech industry?
I think we have tons of fintech in Pakistan already. Some are into microcredits, microlending. Whether we sell this founder of credit fixes into microloans. There are fintechs into multi-bilateral verification. There are fintechs into personal finance. So I think there are a lot of different fintechs into different areas. In terms of trends, I would say it's not trend as such. There are too many people are trying their own sort of ideas. We are yet to see any fintech getting traction. We say they've got 100,000 customers and billion customers. I think this is what will start to then show up. But I think it's early in the stage.
So that fintech you talk about the credit small loans, and fundamentally the loans are against our Islamic culture, this riba. So how do we compete those things?
I
Okay, let me help you that. Let me
इतने मेहनत से शरीर से ट्रेनिंग कराई है
So basically, this is also.
It's on the
Video recorded, right? So I have to be extremely careful.
if somebody's put trying to plan on fire not
Okay. All right. Now, lending is haram. I don't think this statement is factually correct. Okay. Islamic banks across the world have credit instruments, be it credit card, be it musharka, mudarba, you've got takaful, you've got all of those things. So, whichever business you get into, you become a tandoor wala, you become a pan shop, at the side of the road, you have to understand that you have a customer segment you can better deal, and basically service them. So if you think you have got a customer base which is only going to go for Islamic financial services, I think this is going to be a great niche where we will see a lot of fintechs coming up. But in this country of 210 or 20 million population, we will see different fintechs addressing or servicing different segments of society. All of them will flourish. Calling one Islamic is the other non-Islamic. I don't think it's going to really be that definition, but yeah, I think this is about.
Islamic fintech is a big space.
And it is about really understanding what is the product that you want to build, what is the problem that you really want to solve, and what are the personas that you're going for, because you have a population of 270 million, like there are different kinds of segmentation in this. किसी को sharia compliant product अच्छे लगते हैं, किसी को financial banking अच्छी लगती है. It is about really understanding what is that solution that you want to solve for, or problem that you want to solve for.
Fintech is not the same as borrowing, so they're two separate issues.
It's a sort of fintech. See, fintech is an umbrella thing, right? It has a whole spectrum. So regulation, technology, compliance,
So lending club is
lending is part of it. Financial management, payments, cards, all is under fintech.
Yeah, so societal block against fintech is an interest. That's a topic on its own. It's not actually fintech.
But see, look at Pakistan. So conventional banking still dominates.
It's entirely covered by law.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's legal in Pakistan, right?
And Saudi Arabia.
And eventually it's a choice of the customer. You have got both options. You can go for Islamic insurance, you can go for a conventional one, you go for Islamic financing or conventional bank financing. I think both exist. Just depending on the customer's own choice.
I have a question, Mr. Shahid. Sir, my name is Azam Rathod and I'm working on a fintech. Let's suppose if we come to you and you say, okay, fine, you have a fantastic idea, you have a way forward, we see you, the company growing. So you said, okay, let's connect the APIs together, let's work together. So how do you work? What do you say? Azam Rathod powered by UBL or UBL introducing Azam Rathod?
देखिए पहले कुछ स्टेप्स तो ये होते हैं आसन सबसे पहले तो ये होता है कि बिफोर वी गेट टू दैट स्टेज ऑफ ब्रांडिंग एंड कम्युनिकेशन
So let's suppose we're on that stage.
तो पहले तो के सवाल है कि जरूर कि व्हाट इज द वैल्यू प्रोपोजिशन जिसकी भी बात हो रही थी व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम दैट यू थिंक दैट यू विल बी सॉल्विंग फॉर अस फॉर आवर कस्टमर्स फॉर आवर कॉमन कस्टमर्स तो बात तो भी वहां से शुरू होगी
हमारी बात शुरू हो गई है we present you the business plan, you say, okay, you have a fantastic idea, let's work together. Now things come forward, the thing where, the branding, as you said, up branding at that point.
So branding के अंदर again
The preference would be the product that we have built, the baby that we have, or the bank who is already established and want to have our product as an introduction.
white labeling जिसकी आप बात कर रहे हैं. So usually होता ये आजम और पूरी दुनिया में ये होता है सिर्फ हमारे यूके के केस में नहीं. मर्सिडीज गाड़ी जब आप लेते हैं तो उसमें स्पीकर्स बोस के अलग से नहीं बिक रहे होते नाम के साथ, उसमें जो फिटेड इक्विपमेंट होता है वो चाहे बोस का हो, बैग ओलुसन का हो, ऑडियो सिस्टम, यू डोंट गेट टू फाइंड आउट कि वो कौन सा ब्रांड है जो मर्सिडीज के इश्तिहार के ऊपर वो साथ शेयर कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज मर्सिडीज इज मर्सिडीज। सो दुनिया में जो कमर्शियल निगोशिएशंस होती हैं जो ब्रांडिंग के हवाले से भी, तो उसके अंदर ये बात देखी जाती है कि वो प्रोडक्ट का इम्पैक्ट ऑन दी ओवरऑल प्रोपोजिशन कितना सिग्निफिकेंट है कि उसको कितनी कवरेज दी जाए। अच्छा, कई ब्रांड जो होते हैं वो इसमें खुश होते हैं कि जी आप वाइट लेबल कर लें, लेट्स एग्री ऑन रेवेन्यू शेयरिंग या किसी और तरह से पेमेंट मैकेनिज्म के ऊपर, एंड वी आर नॉट वरीड अबाउट ब्रांड एक्सपोजर। कई इस तरह की डील्स होती है, नेगोशिएशंस होती है दुनिया में। कहीं होती है कहते हैं कि जी आप हमें रेवेन्यू शेयर ना करें बट गिव अस सम एक्सपोजर टू द ब्रांड, बिकॉज़ इट्स अ न्यू ब्रांड एंड वी वुड लाइक टू बी एक्नॉलेज्ड फॉर व्हाट वी हैव डन, और हम आपसे कोई फी चार्ज नहीं करेंगे, कोई कुछ नहीं, बस हमें ब्रांड एक्सपोजर देते हैं। इस तरह से भी डील्स होती हैं। व्हेन मैकडॉनल्ड्स एंड पेप्सी कम टुगेदर, यू नो, मैकडॉनल्ड कोक नहीं सर्व करेगा, पेप्सी सर्व करेगा, सॉरी पिज्जा और पेप्सी एंड मैकडॉनल्ड कोक, इस तरह का कॉम्बिनेशन है। वहां पे वो अरेंजमेंट है कि जो ब्रांड को एक्सपोजर भी देंगे, वो रेवेन्यू शेयरिंग भी करेंगे, कॉम्बो डील के अंदर आपको जो है वो एक वही प्रोडक्ट मिलेगा। सो इट डिपेंड्स कि वो कमर्शियल अरेंजमेंट्स और टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस वो क्या है, बट उससे पहले वी हैव टू क्रॉस, यू नो,
एक मैं कुछ मिसाल को दे दूं, वेरी पर्टिनेंट टू पाकिस्तान। So we have an example in Pakistan which I think which can be categorized as a fintech, a recent one, which is branded and acknowledged as GoLooplo. So GoLooplo is a recent fintech, you know, which has the acceptance network. वो नजर आता है केसर के ब्रांड के ऊपर, आईसीसी की ट्रॉफी पाकिस्तान लेकर आता है 6 दिन के लिए, और नेशनल बैंक, बैंक ऑफ फला, आई डोंट नो हाउ मेनी बैंक्स, उनके कार्ड्स के ऊपर GoLooplo का लोगो होता है। So like he said, it depends on what value you bring. When GoLooplo comes and say, I will give your customers the discounted Pizza Hut for the entire year, you know, and the similar discount for like, you know, 1,000 more merchants, the banks agree to a lot of terms that sort of fintech, you know, comes up with. It all depends on, you know, what is your negotiation level. In business, there is no charity.
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on what you are also.
So I tell you with honesty, 22 years TPS, we are more of enabler at the back stage, and I'm happy with it.
And I think what Sharjeel is very अच्छी बात शुरू में भी ये बात कही कि at the end of the day, what are you working for? Are you working for glory or you are working for money? So the day you start working, के end objective क्या है? Going down is a place of glory or making serious amount of money.
Glory, without money, dies out fast.
Exactly. So, जेब में पैसे होते हैं तो you stop caring about a lot of glory. यार तुम must have driving a nice Audi and you know I have that. So be clear. And I think white label is a great model. I mean, I care about the check that I get a month rather than all the glory. So pick your objective and then work backwards from there. Actually, how do I come and force somebody's hand? Later, I see proposition, UBL,
just to add and finish off that part. So, Azam specifically, the UBL के केस में अगर आप UBL की मोबाइल बैंकिंग ऐप देखें, which is the top ranked finance app in the country, banking app after Easy Paisa and Jazz Cash. अब वहाँ पे there are 7 fintech partners who have developed and contributed to the development of that app. कहीं किसी का नाम mention नहीं होता. So they have played such a critical role in, or they were happy. They wanted it that way.
Technology partners or fintech?
Technology partners, half of them are fintechs. So उसके अंदर that's just one example that you don't share branding space with anyone, being UBL.
Just last 2 questions, if they're right.
Actually, I am from SmartPay, being the co-founder of this payment aggregation platform. We are in fintech space and trying to build this aggregation platform for billers, as well as we have integrated with OneLink as well. I also have recently presented some of the new ideas to HDL as well last week. So just क्योंकि थोड़ा सा connected हो रहा है तो हमें क्या problem face हो रहा है? Basically there are some regulations as well, like NIFT की अगर बात करते हैं जो जैसे मंत्री या शहीद साहब का बैंक के उसमें हैं, तो कुछ हम अगर देखें तो कस्टमर फेसिंग हमारी कुछ प्रोडक्ट्स होनी चाहिए जो एंड कस्टमर को फायदा पहुंचे। कुछ हद तक जैसे ऑपरेशनल एफिशिएंसी की बात है, कॉस्ट सेविंग की बात, तो देयर आर सम प्रोडक्ट्स व्हिच कैन हेल्प आउट इन डायरेक्टली विद इन बैंक्स, कस्टमर को कोई फायदा नहीं। बट हमें क्या प्रॉब्लम आ रहा है कि जहां हम अगर कोई आइडिया लेके जाते हैं या कोई वैल्यू प्रोपोजिशन, तो बैंक को हम किस तरह सिंक करें? जैसे एचडीएल की एग्जांपल, they said for one of our product that have you deployed it somewhere, कि पहले इसको कहीं आप डिप्लॉय करें किसी छोटे बैंक में, फिर उसको हमारे पास लेके आए। UBL is on the same stage, I think it's in more than कुछ 5 बैंक्स जिनके नाम आते हैं। तो what's your thinking कि क्या आप एक तरफ रेगुलेशंस, एक तरफ आपकी इंटरनल एफिशिएंसी को ऑप्टिमाइज करना, एक तरफ आपकी अपनी लॉन्ग टर्म प्लानिंग, so how can we as a fintech sync each other? जैसे अगर हम आपके पास कुछ आते हैं लेकर, तो what would your opinion कि आपको क्या चाहिए इस तरह कुछ अगर आप आइडिया दें तो that can be
Yeah, my quick answer is, and I'll let this to be taken by us. My quick answer is, a fintech is a company which has its own customers. Customers, not the bank. There's a big difference. TPS is not a fintech because I enable banks to have its customers. So there's a bit of difference here, right? So I say very clearly that TPS is not a fintech. We are a financial technology company. The definition of fintech is to offer the financial services, not software, directly and have the customers on board. So if you have customers in your fintech and you go to HBL, HBL will certainly listen to you. But if you have got software and you go to the customer, they look at you as a service provider. It's a very different conversation between you and the bank. Then they've got all the right to ask that, what the profile, what are you asking for. So to be very clear, you're going as a vendor to them, or you're going as a fintech.
I think I'll also echo what you said. It is about putting that business case in front of the bank and saying that we have been able to run this X pilot for X amount of time with Y amount of customer base, and this is why we think that this should be a good partnership. And that partnership could be from a vendor perspective or a service provider perspective, or whatever your value proposition is. But I think when you go in front of anybody to collaborate or partner with, it's about putting your business case in front of them rather than saying our idea is $1 million idea.
ये जो मैं आपका सवाल समझा होना तरह मैं इसको डिफरेंट तरीके से मैंने उसको समझा है कि when you go to these banks, तो बैंक आपसे आपकी सीवी के बारे में सवाल करते हैं, आपके पोर्टफोलियो के बारे में कि प्रूवन ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड है और ये सब चीजें, वो ये चीज देखना चाहते हैं जो उनका ट्रेडिशनल तरीका है किसी भी पार्टनर को या सप्लायर को असेस करने का। ये चैलेंज आपको होता है कि जिसमें इवन इफ यू हैव अ ग्रेट आइडिया, यू थिंक कि जी वो मिजाज नहीं मिलते, तो ये आपको
कुछ फ्रीक्वेंसी का है, जैसे हम किस लेवल पे जाएं। जैसे ये एक अच्छी डिफरेंस है कि या तो हम कोई स्मार्ट पे के ऊपर जैसे काम कर रहे हैं, वी हैव मर्चेंट्स ऑन बोर्ड, एक तरफ फंडिंग के थ्रू बैंक्स हैं, तो वी आर एग्रीगेटेड, तो ये एक फिनटेक मॉडल बनता है। दूसरा, अगर हम कोई बैंक में कोई चीज प्रपोज करें, तो वही आप बिल्कुल सही एक डायरेक्शन में सोच रहे हैं, तो व्हाट कैन बी दिस रिस्पांस फ्रॉम योर साइड एज अ।
लेकिन इसमें दो चीजें हैं और ये दो अप्रोचेस हैं। अब इसके अंदर होता ये है कि थोड़ी सी मैं कहूँगा, मैं इसकी एग्जांपल देता हूँ क्योंकि रिसेंटली हो रहा है, आई डोंट नो क्रिकेट को आप फॉलो करते हैं कि नहीं करते हैं। ऑस्ट्रेलिया ने वर्ल्ड कप के लिए अपनी टीम सेलेक्ट की है और उनका क्राइटेरिया ये है कि पिछले 3 साल की परफॉर्मेंसेस प्लेयर्स की वो देख रहे हैं। वो कहते हैं ऑस्ट्रेलिया क्रिकेट टीम को जो वर्ल्ड कप में रिप्रेजेंट करेगा ना, उनको इस क्राइटेरिया पे ये बैट्समैन को ये परफॉर्मेंस है तो वो क्वालिफाई करेगा। दूसरा तरीका हम सुनते हैं कि इमरान खान ने वकार और वसीम को पिक किया, जिन्होंने तो कोई क्रिकेट ही नहीं खेली और कहां से पकड़ के जमान जैसे प्लेयर्स को खिला दिया वर्ल्ड कप, कॉन्फिडेंस आइडेंटिफाई किया कि टैलेंट नजर आया, टेकिंग अ बेट
कंट्रोल्ड तरीके से और उसके बाद जो है दे बिकेम वर्ल्ड कप, 2 डिफरेंट अप्रोचेस हैं। बैंक्स यूजुअली जो है ना ऑस्ट्रेलिया वाली अप्रोच लेते हैं, दे प्ले सेफ, उनकी अपनी प्रोक्योरमेंट की पॉलिसीज, उनकी अपने बोर्ड रूम को खुश रखना, सेटिस्फाई रखना कि यार रिस्क नहीं लेना, कोई ऐसा पार्टनर कल किसको जवाब देते रहेंगे, क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट्स की तरह अनफॉर्चुनेटली मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द बैंक्स दे ऑपरेट लाइक दिस। कुछ बैंक्स ऐसे हैं और मैं आपको एश्योरेंस दे सकता हूँ, आप यूपीएल आएंगे तो आपको ये फर्क वहां मिलेगा कि कुछ बैंक्स ऐसे हैं कि जो पीयूसी करना चाहते हैं उस अप्रोच में, दे आर लुकिंग फॉर दीज काइंड ऑफ पार्टनर्स एंड अपॉर्चुनिटीज के आप आए, एक कोई सैंड बॉक्सिंग वाली अप्रोच, लेट्स डू अ पीओसी स्ट्रेट ओवर। अगर आपके पास आइडिया है, हम आपको ये अपॉर्चुनिटी दे रहे हैं, आपके पास 2 महीने हैं, 3 महीने हैं, शो समथिंग टू अस। अगर उसके अंदर मेरिट हमें कुछ नजर आता है तो वी आर विलिंग टू गो ऑल द वे विद यू। तो कंट्रोल्ड एनवायरनमेंट में टेस्ट केस पकड़ के पीओसी करके प्रूफ ऑफ कॉन्सेप्ट हो गया, सक्सेसफुल हो गया, देन वी बिल्ड आवर रिलेशनशिप फ्रॉम देयर।
So one last question.
Sorry, can I, as a sort of coming from the service provider space, build your strength before seek favor. See, we should collaborate, become something. When the job you will use it like some. So you will be more up here, you will be on a very, very weak role. So make a very strong business case. ताकि ऐसा ना हो कि एक साल बाद में पैसा नहीं कमा पाऊँ, here's my valuation. Because your products are so weak, you won't even get a good valuation. So be very careful on your own strength before you get into any legal partner.
One last question is, great, no, great, thank you. So, I would like to thank all the participants. I think you guys really added a lot to the conversation. We'll try to make this a regular monthly series, and I thank everybody who's come.
This is a monthly series, not trying.
I don't have a choice. But I really like to thank everybody. And I think it was a great conversation. They had really nice, very in-depth insights from all the participants and very good questions from the audience. We'd like to keep it a regular series. Please leave your contact details so we can send out invites for the next two as well. And and thank you once again taking your valuable time out. Sharjeel, Halima, coming over, and I guess the tea is served.
Thank you.
Thank you.